Nope, he ain't J-Rock. What's up everybody? It's Luke James, not the singer. If you're an indie artist looking for an album review and some promo, you can hit up Luke at redmattersite.com. But right now, we're going to take a look at this Lance Skiiiwalker project called Introverted Intuition. Now, I still remember when some of us, myself included, thought that Lance was J-Rock's alter ego, but then we heard him pop up on a couple of other songs, and he did eventually hit us with some singles leading into this album. So I think a lot of us were very curious to hear what TDE's latest signee, Lance Skiiiwalker, was capable of doing, because if I'm being honest with you, I did like his work on songs like Telegram and Money Tree's Deuce, but there wasn't really much there that led me to believe he was this guy who I had to hear and he was going to have this amazing debut album, because all he did was a little bit of singing and there was nothing about his voice that I found to be that great, and I actually thought his voice was kind of dull on those songs as well as throughout this album. But then he did hit us with a couple of singles, and I thought some of them were alright. He did hit us with Could It Be, which starts off kind of dull and plucky before it smooths out on the last half. This one just has Lance crooning some game to a waitress. And then with the song All Stops, you get this very wavy and mellow backdrop as he sings out the names of cities and countries. So these tracks were kind of smooth, but as far as the songwriting goes on these songs and the whole album, I don't think there's really a whole lot here that I took from it and that I found to be very memorable. I definitely understand the whole vibe and theme here. There's some bars about love and heartbreak. Well, not really like rapped bars because he's a singer, but you know, you could still call them bars. I'm just saying the content mostly deals with love and heartbreak, and you have that sort of weird, creepy and dark vibe throughout this one as well, with a lot of experimentation, which I will talk about in a little bit. But I do want to talk about some of the things I did like on this project before I get into more of the stuff that I didn't like. I really did like that single Lover's Lane because it has this really great string production, some of Lance's better vocals, and it just overall I think is one of the most solid tracks on here. And Reality has this really wavy beat that works for the late night and actually matches his vocal style better than a lot of these other weird experimental productions, in my opinion. Although it did have this phone call right in the middle of the song, and that kind of just killed the vibe of the whole thing. So it's not something I could really listen to from start to finish, but the actual musical parts of it where he's singing over the beat are great. So I wish he could have just done the whole song like that, and that would have been fine. Another moment on here I actually enjoyed is Advantage. This is another track which I think has some of his better vocals, and the beat on this is very smooth, but then it breaks down and builds up on the outro. So this was an example of where the beat switching up really worked, whereas on some of these other songs there's just so much going on that it does get a little bit sloppy, a little bit weird and experimental, but it just doesn't really come together well. It just seems like it's not very cohesive in my opinion, and that's why I'm going to get into all that experimental type of shit right now. You do get that radio skit, which is nothing more than some warbly synth and him just talking, so this is just a track you're going to skip every time, but it does introduce us to that warbly sound that we're going to hear on a couple of other songs, including on the track called Sound, which starts off with this and another phone call on the radio show, and then it switches up into this bright guitar type of production that is actually kind of dope, but by the time it kicks in, you don't really care, and it's very short. So this is what I'm talking about when I say some of these songs switch up too much. You can't really get into the groove with some of these tracks. Like, you might like bits and pieces of these songs, maybe the first half or maybe something going on in the middle or the last half, but there's just so much shit going on throughout this album that I didn't think it was a very smooth ride at all, even if you do want to use the defense that it's supposed to be weird and it's supposed to be experimental. I just don't think it really came together that well. Now you get that same warbly sound on that radio skit and on the start of Sound on the song Toaster, and this has what might be the most pointless Schoolboy Q feature of all time, because all he does is sing a couple of lines. Lance Skiiiwalker probably could have just done that himself, but maybe he just wanted to say he had Schoolboy Q featured on here, because when I saw that it did make me interested, but then it let me down because he wasn't doing too much on it. Another thing I didn't like is on Attraction, where his vocals just sound really bad. They're kind of pitched up, just very weird sounding, so that wasn't a part that I liked on this album either. There's just so many things about this that I think were very sloppy, didn't come together well, and it is easily the worst release on TDE up to this point in my opinion. So I give it a 2 out of 5. Maybe if you like it, you can explain to me why you do. What is it you feel about this one outside of it being kind of weird and experimental? I've seen some people say, oh, you gotta be high to really appreciate it, but If I gotta be fucked up to feel something, I don't really think that's a good sign. That's just my opinion. 2 out of 5. Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do all that good YouTube, social media stuff. And also make sure you check out my new Facebook page, facebook.com/LukeJamesReviews. Got a lot of fun stuff going on over there. Thank you for watching, everybody. I will see you next time.